Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about uh, Acolyte destroying Star Wars or teaching you a lesson. So, you probably know what this show is, so I won't explain that too much. You can look at lots of sites and other YouTube channels to get a rundown and lots of advertisements that you can find, and you can obviously watch this show. You know, in easily accessible places. So, but Acolyte is stirring up a lot of discussion, um, and I thought it would be a good time to kind of just kind of think about this. Since Holly and I, we've been watching this show, we've been going through all the episodes as they come out. Let's start with the basic stuff. So, Acolyte is obviously set in the Star Wars universe. It is set way before. I think it's set like very early on. I haven't seen everything in the Star Wars universe. There's so much. I don't have time to keep up with all of that, all the cartoons and all of the games. I have not played all of them. So I don't know if this could be something earlier than this, but I watched 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Episode 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Obviously 7, 8, 9. Um, uh, Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian. But all the other stuff I'm not super familiar with. So anyway, but this is set like about I think it's about 100 years, about a century before the events of the Phantom Menace. And the official, the centerpiece of the, 1 through 9 Star Wars films. So it's kind of it takes place like kind of in a time where there is there's Jedi, obviously. There is I'm not exactly sure on all of the politics and all of the organizations and the geopolitical arrangement of the galaxy at this point, but there are Jedi, and they are, of course, recruiting. What I say, yeah, they are recruiting. They are seeking out like in episode 1, they're seeking out people who have the force sensitivity, the potential to become strong force users, right? And obviously, the force is duct tape, obviously. Uh, the force is this mysterious power that has a light side, has a dark side, holds the universe together, right? It binds us together, like a broken water pipe or a your hand when you don't have healthcare, in the Imperial Metropole, and you have to duct tape your lacerations back together. No, the force is the power that they're seeking out. And the main characters in this story are it's kind of like a Star Wars detective story where the Jedi are was everybody is a little bit confused. Some people it's unclear at this point in the show, and I don't want to spoil too much, but it's unclear who is actually telling the truth and who isn't. How much of the truth are they telling? But a lot of it is a kind of mystery where like what happened to this what happened to this lost force user that we were training and then disappeared. It begins with a murder mystery actually, because a Jedi is killed. A Jedi played by Carrie. No, actually, yeah, that happens early at the very first episode. Well, I shouldn't say who, but there's Jedi that are fighting, and then one of them is killed, and you see that like on screen, like in the opening bit. There's lots of martial arts, and the choreography is very well done. It's got lots of sword fighting and swashbucklering with neon laser sword characteristics, and they have lots of there's a lot. There's you have all your usual Star Wars force using. There's starships. There's people with blasters. there are, but a lot of it is kind of centering around this mystery solving of a murder takes place of a Jedi, and then this kind of the investigation. What happened? Who is doing this? Why are the Jedi being killed? Why are the Jedi actually are being hunted? Right, and then some people are like, well, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to. We kind of want to cover that up and not discuss that because we don't want that getting out there. And it's a lot of this. It's kind of like a whodunit Star Wars. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting like approach to the storytelling. Interesting approach to the universe because I had not seen, you know, that specifically done before. Like I guess like obviously Star Wars, and Star Wars is like Akira Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress, filtered through the American science fictional lens of Frank Herbert's Dune, and then spat out by George Lucas's subconscious. That's what Star Wars is, right? But it's a story of, a lot. It's very much a war. During a war movie, there's a lot of war, big wars happening. It's I guess it involves a lot of intrigue and espionage, like the spy, stealing plans, lost princesses, and then the droids, right, R2D2 and C3PO, kind of like on a as the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Laurel and Hardy robotic comedic duo that are having but they're also that are also couriers, like trafficking these plans that could change the course of this ongoing war in the Star Wars, right? So in this world, like the war aspect of it and the espionage, obviously Star Wars was written during the Cold War, Cold War One, I should say, and so that has a lot of those kind of aspects to it. The spying, and to deal with this international, interstellar war. But this one is more like just kind of investigating a death, investigating what has happened to this, what has happened to the, or who is behind all these murders. And let me try to move forward with that. I'm just trying to recap. I'm trying to recap all. I'm not gonna recap the entire show in this stream. So let's move on. But when you have the obviously, I mean, the thing that people are upset about, I mean, I should say some people are upset about, is well, you know what it is, right? It's kind of similar to the fandom menace people, I think. I think a lot of people won't admit that. But this happened with the Lord of the Rings of Power show, right? Same thing happened. Similar effect. At on one hand, it's kind of like, how, is this the squeaky wheel problem, where they make the most noise, but they're a small minority of the audience. And I think there's definitely something to that. At the same time, like there is, there's more iceberg, I think, beneath the surface of that. I'm gonna branch out into that topic as the dive gets deeper later on. But obviously, there's a lot of videos that are about acolytes destroying Star Wars. This is the worst show ever made. This is I'm never gonna watch another Star Wars again. Right? And I think a lot of that, is coming from the same place as the Fandom Menace. It's coming from the same place as the Gamergate stuff. It's coming from the same place as the Rings of Power. And I made a lot of videos like about a year or 2 years ago, like that was dealing with this, the She-Hulk, anger about She-Hulk, anger about there's a movie coming out that has a Black King Edward, I think, and that similar thing. I mean, less there because it's not. Western like old Western nerd IP. Let's put it that way. Um, yeah, I'm gonna try to be more diplomatic in the beginning at least. It's not that it's not that Bridgerton is like it's I would say it's has a higher women and feminine person viewership demographic. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's like that show is another show that's like obviously very diverse. That show, but there's not as much of the backlash toward that because number one, it's not like a Gen X millennial beloved nerd Western nerd IP. That's having new new content or new. I don't like the word content. New art, new films and shows and games created for it. So because that has its own impact. Now, of course, like any show is gonna have some blowback. People are gonna have the you cannot politics can never fully be taken out of films and shows and games because everything is political. But and people's emotions and people's opinions and people's feelings about things can't be taken out of things, right? And so you're always gonna have some backlash. But there's something particular about these kinds of shows that were very popular when people were younger, and a lot of times people misremember. As I made this point on several videos that people often will misremember, like the films and the shows that they have watched. Like for example, Terminator. Terminator has always had a strong female protagonist, but people often kind of misremember as like, oh, it was about Arnold being a cool, strong dude, but it was actually Sarah Connor is actually it's actually a final girl story. It's not, it's not G.I. Joe, but people kind of misremember because he has a strong presence in the Terminator shows, but he's actually kind of he's number one. He's the antagonist initially, and it's not really about. I mean, it deals with the Terminator, but it's actually the Sarah story, and it's the story of survival. It's the story of struggle against adversity, and it's not really. It's often misremembered. Is what I'm trying to say, right? But people got upset at Terminator Dark Fate when it came out because it's like, why do we have these strong female characters? I mean, it's always been that, it's always had those, right? Until number 3, and then they fridged her. I guess they had Claire Danes step in her place. Anyways, let's get back to Acolyte though. So like, and anyway, so I could dance around that topic a lot, but because I've talked about that in several videos previously, but that is obviously that's a factor in why people are talking about it's destroying the Star Wars, and they have all their usual ways to describe it. I mean, I would just say like cop outs about the writing. The writing is not very good. It's not very logical, and I've talked about that in another previous video about. I talked a lot about that in my Prey video, the installation in the Predator franchise, which is that like when people get upset because they don't see their preferred gender and their preferred race or skin color as the central character, a lot of people get upset about that, right? And that is unfortunate, right? And then they can't really say that, right? You can't unless you're like, I don't know, Tucker Carlson, and you're just like, yeah, well, I like white supremacy. It's awesome to or Richard Spencer. You can't really just say that, so you kind of have to couch it in the writing isn't very good. This isn't logical. I see a lot of like women couldn't fight this well. This is what is it? This is unrealistic. That kind of stuff, right? But it's all unrealistic. I mean, laser swords don't. I mean, this is movie. As Harrison Ford would say, it's a movie. Star Wars is a movie. It's entertainment. This is all made up. This is the actual reality. It's just that like we have to accept that. It's actually like a problem that there's the part of now I'm gonna dovetail out of this a little bit. you know, the conception that people have of movies, you know, kind of like going. I'm just gonna kind of show like this goes part of the as I was talking about last time, the mental decline of the West, right, and the end of Western domination. Um, Oop, sorry, just want to throw this up on the screen. Yeah, so like
Yeah,
you know,
right.
in the part of the in this series of recent series I've been talking about, focusing more on the specific like political topics. Um, Sorry, my computer's going like you're turning too many things on. So like the end of Western domination and the mental decline that kind of comes with that. Um, not just these presidents, but just the entire Western mindset, right? But part of the decline is also, as I talked, there is always a mental illness there, right? With this belief in the supremacy of whiteness, of Westernness, of Europeanness, of the rules-based international order, of the so-called liberal democracy, of all of these things, the capitalist system that the West has brought and spread and forces throughout the world historically, the colonial system, the neo-colonial system, right? All of these things, the UN, even the WHO, the not to say that health is bad, but I mean the way that they are unjust and unethical in their practices of it, in all the ICC, right? All of these are like outgrowths of a Western mindset of supremacy of certain people and certain entities and certain ideologies, and everyone else must be subservient to them, right? This is really the core of Western culture, sadly, very sadly. Um, and then the decaying of that is causing declines in the empire, and then that's also the economic and the military have already occurred, as I talked about last time, and now it's the psychological, and the mental. Is the reality is slowly, very slowly sinking in, right? That was kind of the theme of last year. Not just in the lack of, not just in watching your own president say that he's gonna be running and he's gonna beat Trump in 2020. Biden just said that like 2 days ago or yesterday or today, that he said I am running and I'm gonna win and I'm gonna do a great job in this year 2020. He basically doesn't know what year it is, right? And this is one in a long litany of his decline, partially due to getting COVID innumerable times, which causes massive cognitive damage, omeletification of your neurons, etc. So, but anyway, but the psychological, and there's also like a psychological, there's like a libidinal, not necessarily libidinal, but there's like a liminal, um, there's like a psyche loss, right? There's an identity loss that's happening, right? And this is also kind of refracted as the empire declines and we enter the age of, the end of Western domination, and we move towards multipolarity, right? Where it's not one single country, and area and people and Europeans or also men, patriarchy, right? That are dominating everything. Now you're having actual more equality, right? More actual democracy on a global scale, more actual say, and more actual taking other people's views and interests and their economic, their security, their social, their cultural views and needs and interests into they're all on the table, right? Rather than just like a tiny minority, right? Tiny minority of people, of races and gender and locations of people on the planet, and also income and wealth level of people. A tiny minority of the earth decide for everyone else what's going to happen, right? Which is that's the Western imperialist colonialist system, and also it's deep in their culture because of it's deep in the culture that I was raised in as well, because I was raised in I was raised to be an American in Hawaii, so I understand what it is, what it's like. I mean, I know exactly the thought patterns. We all know. We all know it on some level, even if we don't recognize it. Just as another example, Joe Biden just said, he just said, what did he say? He said, uh, the United States runs the world, and it's awesome. But Americans, when I grew up in the 20th century, right? I mean, it's still today. Biden is just saying that's the Western mindset, and nobody thought there was anything wrong with that. Like even now, as you hear that, right? If you think back to imagine, I mean, I don't know, maybe a lot of people still think there's nothing wrong with that, right? Our country runs the world. We're the greatest country in the world. We deserve to run the world, right? I'm sorry, but that's propaganda. And it's also incoherent. It's irrational, and it is hypocritical and nonsensical if you believe in democracy and that all of the world deserves democracy, which is everyone is equal, everyone has equal say, and it's deciding things in a fair way with each one person. You got an equal say as everyone else, right? But then you say, but we're gonna run the world. So you're gonna say for everyone else what they're gonna have and what they're gonna do, and they're gonna decide for everyone else what's gonna happen. But then you say, but everyone has a say, right? It's nonsense, right? It doesn't make any sense. But the West is a mental illness. That doesn't make any sense. It's irrational, right? And so, it just changes its story, and it has to constantly backpedal and play with that cognitive and just try to keep people perpetually befuddled and gaslit, and just keeping their head down and surviving under the nonsense that their bosses, their families, a lot of the time, their government, their businesses, their religious leaders, and all of their cultural, even cultural leaders, philosophers. I mean, with very few exceptions, you just have to keep your head down and just, democracy and fairness is the best thing ever, and we're going to be really unfair with everyone right now, and we deserve to be number one and the best because we're so fair with everyone, and we're also going to be unfair with you. Like, what? It's nonsense, right? So, and so why am I talking about that? Because that's really what's happening when it comes to Acolyte. What is happening is that people who have been used, as I know this is a recurring theme, but the people who have been used to having their gender, obviously usually male, their race, obviously generally the white, and generally from North America, obviously Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and these are made in America. But there is very little diversity even in the original Star Wars, and Star Trek is I was talking about that a little bit last time. Star Trek is a science fictional property that even tried to push the boundaries a little bit, right? Many people were very upset about that. They're like, no, we don't want Captain Kirk kissing a black woman. Like, that was, it caused a huge firestorm, right? And they suffered for that. Like, the TV network didn't want that to happen. They didn't actually want, the networks didn't really want to have any or as few people of color in their shows as possible at that time as well. And so people were used to having the movies reflect that situation in the world. But the thing is, now that's not the world that we're in. I mean, that world was never fair that certain people got to have all the screen time, all the airtime, and then also have all of reflecting the world in which a tiny minority of people, right, got to have the say and all the resources and all the wealth of, right, and tell other people that you're bad and you're wrong, and we're the best and fair and democratic while being unfair with them and undemocratic with them, right? As as a native Hawaiian, Hanani K. Trask is one of our great thinkers, and coming back to this week it was independent. It was what calls itself the Independence Day, right? Just this week, right? We were a lot of people were celebrating July 4th, but for Native Hawaiians, right, we don't, in Puerto Rico, right, we don't necessarily celebrate, and we don't. Most of us actually don't celebrate the United States, right? In the U.S. empire, because when Biden says, he even celebrated. He said, I made a lot of wars. I fought a lot of wars, and that was he was like, it was a great thing. Like, I fought the Iraq War. I was for the Iraq War. I was for the war on terror. I was for the war in Afghanistan. I was for the war in Syria. I was for the war in Vietnam, and that was really great. That's Biden, like, literally just said that recently, and he also said, America runs the world, and the world loves it, right? And it's like, that's an empire. And the thing in Star Wars is kind of like, it deals with an empire, right? Except most Americans don't, have never actually recognized which country in the world the empire represents, right? Or which one actually is an empire in the real world, right? Because if you ask most Americans, they don't really think of it that way, If they did, I mean, maybe some of them do, but they don't do anything about it. Or it's certainly in the last 40 years, that's for sure. Nobody is it's because, and that's what the case, because when you actually confront people with that, like, that reality of that their self-image as being like the greatest place, the greatest country in the world, especially people who identify strongly as Americans, right? They get really upset, right? That's part of why these backlashes happen, right? I mean, if people were able to accept that the empire is the United States, there's even an empire state. This is kind of the ridiculous thing, right? There's an empire state building. New York is the Empire State. It even is like right there. It's right there. The branding is right on the package, like the stormtrooper head is right on the logo of America, right? It's called as itself the Empire. Now sometimes they try to pretend like they're not, but then Biden says things like, "We run the world." Right? What do you think an empire is, right? It's just one country, entity, and generally imperial metropole, the central economic and military and geopolitical nexus that controls the rest of its own country, and then also controls other countries and subjugates them and extracts their resources and wealth for itself and for its elites, right? That's what an empire actually is. And so when Biden says we run the world, what you're saying is you're the bad guys, right? But most people don't. But this is the thing about the American mind and the Western mind, is it's full of cognitive dissonance and nonsense, and it easily compartmentalizes, right? When we say we run the world, and when we say we're unfair with other countries, and we decide what other countries are going to do, and we lecture other countries, like the ICC, right? The Europeans, America is just a European project ultimately, and the ICC just said, right? The ICC, the European officials just said the International Criminal Court is not for your International Criminal Court is for putting Asian and African and Arab countries leaders in prison. It's not for Europeans. It's not for Americans. Right? So what you're saying is your justice system is unfair. Which there's no Western justice system is unfair. It's unjust, right? Yes, democracy and one person, one vote is great, and we're gonna give you no votes, and we're gonna tell you what to do, right? Anyway, the fact that Westerners can hold all of these thoughts in their head simultaneously, that is like the completely broken, irrational, incongruous. Just, I don't know. It's there's something deeply. It's a serious mental illness that is caused by being perpetually bombarded with conditioning, with propaganda, and just existing in this just deeply malicious place. Ultimately, whether you admit it to yourself or not, and just survive it, and just check your conscience and check your actual empirical rationality, and just forget about that and keep your head down and just try to live your quote unquote best life, doing GENLCIDE. But the reality is that most of us that are native Hawaiians. I'm a native Hawaiian, or indigenous people, or people global South. I'm talking about, again, Asia, African, Latin American, non-Western, non-European people and countries and organizations and minorities in the diaspora living within, like that, Black and brown peoples inside the United States, and a lot of Asian peoples inside of the West. It's always been an unjust situation. It's always been like, how can you talk about democracy when you treat us so undemocratically? And obviously, I made this thread that you can go and read that deals with this. I make these frequently. I made one for July 4th, right? This is Hanani K. Trask that is speaking about the United States has, she says in this speech, we are not American. We are not American. We are not American. We will die as Hawaiians. We will never be Americans. The United States has never been democratic with Native people. The United States overthrew our country, imprisoned our leaders, banned our language, stole our land, and forcibly made us a colony of the U.S., right? Like similar to Puerto Rico. That's not democratic. That's not fair, right? That's imperial. And she goes on to, say that, that the U.S. has never been democratic with any Native people, not Native Americans who don't celebrate July 4th, not African peoples, and but again, globally, that reflects that similar, it's a similar worldwide historical and ongoing injustice, non-democracy, and inequality, right? That most of the world experiences at the hands of the West, and so that's what's happening now. Obviously, is that we're having the collapse of that, and the Western domination. We're having with the collapse of the economic and military domination, right? Which was never democratic, and it always had to go, right? But now comes the cognitive and mental and psychological and identity, internal existential crisis of each American and Americanized, Western or Westernized, Europeanized person, right? They're going through this process of denial, of grief, of loss, right? And it's a real process. Just another one is Richard Wolff. I was recently talking on a podcast that, as somebody who has been a socialist, Marxist for much of the 20th century, I know what it's like to look out at America during the Cold War and even much of the 20th century and 21st century, and seeing what the ideas, your ideology, right, of I would like to see a world with socialism, and not seeing that happening, seeing the world turning more and more towards Reaganomics, more and more people turning away from that can be depressing. That can be isolating. It causes negative feelings. It causes sadness, right? Now, of course, what is right. If you know what is right in your heart and you continue to fight for that, and that's a great thing, right? But it can be sad to see that what you believe about yourself, the things that you have fought and invested your time and energy in, those things that you truly believe in, that they are falling apart, right? Or that you're not seeing those reflected in your society, in your country, right? So similarly, right? So and this goes on into in the economic realm, the capitalist neoliberal system, which is part of a larger colonial, white supremacist, historical system, right? It's really these are all interconnected. That when the people the Rishi Sunaks and the Bidens and these people and many other people that not necessarily presidents, but just the populations, right, who view themselves strongly as Americans, strongly as, and also obviously liberals, but not just liberals, just Americans, Westerners of any kind, Canadians, Germans, British, French, right? They say France is dissolving as we speak. It's basically almost like ungovernable, and not necessarily in a good way. It's just a wreck. They just lost 40% of their electricity. why did they lose 40% of their electricity? Well, this is actually directly has to do with that, right? This directly has to do with the same thing, the same reason why people are mad about Acolyte. I'm going to come back to Acolyte, but obviously I'm branching out a lot from the central film that I was talking about. But this is all directly related, and I think actually Acolyte, the depression people feel about losing, right? Losing the battle over their Star Wars, right? Which I don't know, which in the sense of not having a Star Wars with 50 to 90% or 60 plus, the majority of characters being white and men, right? And the major actors being that. In one sense, that's a loss. In another sense, that is the restoration of equality, right? Because that was never fair. It wasn't fair to the women, and it wasn't fair to everybody else that wasn't a white person, right? And so, and the anxiety and the identity crisis that I would argue there's actually an identity crisis happening when people go like, wait, but Star Wars is where people that look exactly like me and are exactly like me, we run the galaxy, right? This is like the thing, which is that like George Lucas talks about, well, I mean, Star Wars was inspired by Vietnam, the Viet Cong resisting the U.S. imperialism, the U.S. empire, right? But he didn't really say that till way late, right? And a lot of people, that's not really a discussion that was being had. People read America into Luke Skywalker. Americans saw themselves in Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and in the good guys, the rebels, right? They didn't see the Viet Cong. That's not what they were seeing. We know this because when Americans do watch, the average American does watch a Star Wars that actually reflects the diversity of the world, they freak out and they're like, no, I don't want to see Africans and Asians. I don't want to see Asians. I don't want to see an Asian guy, right, as the protagonist. Even though those are actually in the earth. Those are the East Asians. Many of them have been the resistors of empire. I mean, it was the Korean communists and it was the Vietnamese communists against the United States empire that were resisting, right? So it only makes sense actually. It doesn't make sense, but like it's breaking the minds of the westernized American. And the thing is, yes, there have always been anti-imperial Americans. There were during the Vietnam, and obviously Lucas is a boomer, so they went through this period where there were big protests against the Vietnam War, and that's true. And there's always been people that have been against imperialism, the racism, and the capitalism, as Martin Luther King and several other black activists have pointed out in the 60s and the 70s. Like there are those people, right? But they were largely silenced. They were pushed. They were not the majority of the American opinion for much of the late 20th century, especially in the 80s and the 90s and then the noughties and after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, right, in the late 80s. There was what they sometimes people call it the unipolar moment, the planetary American unlimited hegemony. Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote about the grand chessboard and the success of American primacy and how it must be maintained forever. And one of the biggest, obviously, potential future challenges would be Russia and China coming together in the future. And Zbigniew Brzezinski was one of the people that has basically plotted and maintained U.S. Imperial hegemony. Just you don't have to know too much about that, but just but that's not. It wasn't just a handful of shadowy CIA deep state spooks in DC and in think tanks that were thinking this. This was the Americans were raised. I know this because I was raised to believe that the United States was the only remaining power in the world. It was the greatest ever, and it would reign forever, right? The end of history, right? Like Francis Fukuyama. History has ended. The great struggles of mankind, of feudalism and communism and capitalism and the human civilizational evolution has ended, and history is finished. Liberal democratic capitalism has won. America is crowned with that. America has the heavyweight championship forever. There will never be any more history, right? We don't need to write anything else in the history books. The United States and Western liberal democratic capitalism is the champion. Everyone must adopt it, right? That was the attitude. Like that was the attitude of Americans. Like for the 90s, into the early in 2001, in the 9/11 kind of gave Americans and Westerners a new thing to fear and to worry about. Like, oh, what if terrorism comes for us, right? But part of that has to do with the military-industrial complex, because obviously all of this is based upon nonsense, right? All of these beliefs about yourself are based upon lies. Your number one, your military supremacy, which is not that supreme. Your economic invulnerability, obviously, it's not invulnerable. That's why the United States is bankrupt. History having ended, obviously, it didn't, right? And that's why we're not living in a grand chessboard dominated by the United States anymore and the West, right? We're living in the end of Western domination, right? And I'm not going to rattle off all the statistics because I did that last time. I'm sure I did. And anyways, but let's get back to the Acolyte. So when you don't see, so not seeing not seeing, that again, that Western hegemonic, seeing yourself as simultaneous, that it's a psychosis, arguably, right? To need to see yourself as simultaneously the slave master and also the most just and liberating person in the world. Do you see how nonsensical this is? You have to control the people, but also be the fairest in the world. It's incoherent. But somehow, the West makes Americans, and not just before this, there was the colonial era. Before this, there were people in Greece and Rome, every Western civilization, right? Greece and Rome and Britain, France and Spain. This entire history, there have been people who have believed themselves to be the most moral, but did the most horrible, evil things, right? And so the Americans, like their predecessors, like the Roman Empire, like the British Empire, they instill in their own people this mental illness, this psychosis of believing yourself to simultaneously be the most just, the most liberating, the most equal, the most democratic, will also being, not just being, right? It's actually like people talk about in the Middle East, how can this horrible thing be happening in the Middle East, right? I'm trying to make sure this video gets seen. That's why I'm not going to say everybody's name, but like, how can that be happening? What is wrong with the minds of Zionist people? What is wrong with the people in Israel? What is wrong with their minds that they can believe themselves to be the most moral army? They can believe themselves to be just defending themselves. They can believe themselves to be good people while they do these atrocities, right? It's very simple. It's just Westernism. It's not really. I mean, maybe it's a little bit more extreme in the way that, like, the way they're acting on it in a very high level. But that's just Western culture, That's the same. That's the same as what America did in Iraq, That's the same as what Americans did in Vietnam. Ultimately, right? Is to believe that you are right, you are just, you deserve. And more people died, by the way, in those places than have died in Palestine, But it's the same mindset, which is that, like, we're the most free, we're the most democratic, we're the most moral, and we're going to come to your house in Iraq, Vietnam, Afghanistan, etc., all around the world, Sudan, Congo. We're going to come to your country, and we're going to take everything, kill, do horrible atrocities, We're gonna just run your entire country without your say, no say whatsoever, and that's the best thing for you, and that's the most moral thing. We're the best people ever. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying? That's why a lot of soldiers that go and enforce the will of the empire, right? They come back absolutely broke. Unless they have, like, you already have mental illness being a Westerner. You have psychosis of some. You are dissociative by de facto dissociative. I would argue is what you are just to exist as an American or a European or a Canadian. You can't, right? Or you have to be standing in you have to just be in constant disbelief. You have to just be in constant rage and frustration, and like be taking action against that, right? It's the only way to really make the world you live in, the people you're around, make sense, right? It's also the only way to be a moral person, right? And act actually in a just, equal, respectable, virtuous way, right? It means to be. It's kind of being constantly enraged, and that can be exhausting. And let me tell you, I know from experience, right? So to be an American, to be a Westerner, is to be ignorant. It is to be psychotic. Ultimately, to engage willfully in Western culture and its projects, its economics, its policies, right? To act in its economy is actually to be on a certain level going through a deep sociopathy. It's all of these illnesses, right? And then you have to justify that backwards with the dissociative disorder, going, well, actually, well, you know, I mean, it's those people deserve what they got. You know, when I work for this GENOCIDAL university or company, you know, it's not that bad because, you know, I mean, it's just a little bit of GENOC. I mean, just a little bit of atrocities. It's just a little bit of war crimes. I mean, it's not that bad, right? You've already, you know, whatever rationality, whatever empiricism, whatever scientific, whatever intellectual honesty and intellectual ability you have, it's all gone. You've thrown it out the window. You just said evidence only matters when it affirms what I want to hear about myself at any particular time. That's why you can't really do science in that. You know, you can't really do serious science on any kind of scale. You can't do policy. You can't do anything other than, you know, be part of that horrible system that is irrational and it is nonsensical and it is based upon mass violence. And you have pockets of people that in their specific telescoped in field, you could do some electric, you could do electrical engineering. You could like repair that F-16. Maybe. I mean, they don't seem to be doing very well fixing up their jet planes or their Boeing planes. They seem to all be crashing and stranding astronauts in space to astronauts can pray that the Chinese invent a nanotechnology that will transmute them into tardigrades on the Americans' International Space Station, because they're all going to die in space at the current rate at which Boeing is not launching aircraft and spacecraft, right? And assassinating whistleblowers. So Boeing is going to apparently it's going to, speaking of science fiction, apparently Boeing wants to help America strand and leave starving dead castaways in space. You know, it used to be a great thing to be an American astronaut. That's another end of the Western hegemony. Is this belief in? I think Joe Biden said we're gonna get back to the moon. I see a lot of these. We're gonna get back in space. We're gonna do it, and then actually we don't have any plan, and we don't have any like actionable series of steps to even get someone in space. We can't even get American astronauts, right? This is JFK. This is part of what built the 20th Americans 20th century superpower era, was the space race and Americans succeeding at getting into space. Now, they don't tell anybody actually they had to do a lot of socialism, that they do that evil communist stuff that Russia was doing in order to make functioning spacecraft. It's part of why the spacecraft aren't working so well now. It's because of the end stage hyper capitalist system that's kind of basically eaten everything, including planes and spacecraft, right? And but that's psychologically damaging when you see, oh my God, I thought we used to be able to get to space, but now we can't. Now your Western and American identity is taking another blow, right? And it's going, wow, we're not. that great, and then just so you need copium. You need increasing dosages of copium and also drugs. Obviously, the West is exploding with drug usage. Suicide rates are high. Just the depression rates are off the charts. All this stuff, right? And but that's part of being a Westerner, right? It's gleefully, joyfully being willfully ignorant of the horrific, just malicious and nonsensical system, country, politics, businesses that you are a part of as a stormtrooper, and just having a good lunch, having $400 again Iron Chef Morimoto or $500, $1,000 wine in a French Parisian cafe, if they still exist. Those are falling apart. That's the French identity is collapsing, because I thought we were the great friends with the beautiful, street. Now you can't even walk down any of these streets because, there's no electricity to light the Eiffel Tower because Africans are taking it back. Welcome to multipolarity. Welcome to actual democracy, right? Now, it doesn't mean France will deserve to have electricity, but they can't steal it from other people, right? And so that's another blow to the French identity, right? Europe as a whole, losing the war in Ukraine. I don't know if you know this, but the West has lost the war in Ukraine. It's done. Okay, that is a huge blow, right? To the military supremacy. Well, we are the strongest militaries in the world. We are the best. So you're saying might makes right. We deserve to rule this world because we conquered you all. So wait. So going to other people's places, not asking, not offering them improvements, not helping them, not lifting them up, but just going to other people's countries and killing them all until they submit to you. That makes you might makes right. That's isn't that barbarism? Well, I mean, not really, because when Americans and Europeans do it, we did that for the right reasons. So the right reasons is what? Africa's cobalt and diamonds and South America's lithium and copper, and Asia's tea and fine products and sweatshop labor. So what is the right reason? Well, we brought them democracy. Oh, you mean the puppet plutocrat you put in charge that you ran from Washington? So everything is nonsense. Everything is mental illness in the West. Everything, including their science fictional fandoms. Right? So losing the war in Ukraine is breaking Europe right now. It's breaking the United States, and the Europeans are obviously right next door, and it's really breaking them. Like, from all the reports that I hear, it's just like it just we're going to win. All we have to do is, even if they say, if you turn on the 8 o'clock news. I was listening to somebody who was recently in Britain and France, and he said, I had to go back to Asia. I had to go back to a country in Asia. Like, Asia is much bigger than Europe, by the way, in case you don't know that. It's 60% of the world's population. But I had to go back to Asia or a South American country, because when I lived I stayed for a while in Britain and France and Germany, and you turn on the 8 o'clock news, and all it is just like russophobia. We're gonna win any moment now, and Vladimir Putin is eating children or something just ridiculous, some nonsense. They're just they're stealing French children out of orphanages, and all the Muslims and Africans are coming to steal our country from us, and we have to beat back the hordes. We have to beat back the African hordes. We have to beat back the Muslim hordes. We have to beat back the Russian hordes. We have to beat them all back, right? And it's like wall to wall. You can't have conversations with. This person was saying, I used to have conversations with intellectuals. I used to talk to journalists that actually did a little bit of investigative journalism. I mean, it's not very much, but they did a little bit, I used to talk to political scientists. I used to talk to professors. I used to talk to people in Parisian cafes in Berlin, have a beer with somebody and have a discussion about, the history in World War II. I could talk to people about, or what's happening now in the context of World War II. I could talk to people in London. But now I have no friends in any of those places. I'm just trying to be honest as a a global citizen, geopolitical analyst, somebody from South America, right? But he's like, we can't talk honestly about what's happening in the world, because all they want to do is just say that Russia is going to lose any second, and Europe will restore control over Europe and the America. Europe is basically a vassal of America, that many of them don't reason. But the West is going to restore control of the world, and all we have to do is just throw a little more money, send a little more money, a few more weapons to Ukraine. We send a little more money to ISRAEL and a little more weapons that way. And if we just we just kick out all of the people that are different, we kick out all the Slavic people, we kick out all the we get more of these Arabic out of our train stations. We have less of this African people in our Africans in our restaurants, working in our restaurants. If we have less, Libyans and people from the Levant region, we're fixing our power lines. If we just get rid of a bunch of these people, then we're gonna be great again, and we're gonna restore Europe. And it's just nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense, right? And he said, I couldn't. I had to leave because you can't. Even if you, it's like a wall. It's like a matrix wall. It's an impenetrable barrier of propaganda. You can't even break through the level of brainwashing, or the level of doubling, tripling, quadrupling down. And it's just like everything falls apart. It's like watching Caligula, right, marrying the horse, or it's like watching the unhinged heightened levels of just like nonsensical lunacy and irrationality as people throw everything they can at the wall, and their own leaders are pushing them, right? Because what the U.S. ultimately wants is every European to go die, trying to fight a losing battle, right? That they can't win. I mean, whatever you think, you can say whatever you think, you can think whatever you think about Russia, but if you believe that if you there's lots of sources that you can go and listen to and look up if you want to actually get the actual empirical facts about the logistics of who is winning and who is not. Russia, I'm sorry, Richard Wolff will tell you this as well. Their economy is booming. It is the biggest economy and the fastest growing. It's outgrowing every European economy. They're militarily, they're not losing. Their military is only getting stronger. The United States built a military industrial complex that was, the military industry was working with the military. Industry was geared, and the factories were altered, and their production lines went from making a car, or from making a soda can, or from making a bottle, or whatever they're making, to making a shell, a tank, right? A rifle, or whatever. It was military hardware, right? Military aircraft. And that was a big part of what gave the United States the big boost, on top of not being destroyed, but it was reorienting the economy to rapidly produce, and there was a strong drive to everybody work simultaneously to the same end, right? In this drive, and some people made a lot of money in that, including Ford, including IBM, including many industrialists and the capitalists. But at the same time, it did produce a lot of jobs. It produced a lot of output. It did boost. It was an adrenaline shot into the economy, and that pushed the U.S. into its economic position. It was part of what pushed the U.S. into its economic dominance in the second half of the 20th century, right? Russia is having that same process, right? Or not exactly the same process, but it is having a real need to push its economy towards pumping out vast quantities of shells, tanks, hardware. They just in a year and a half, they made an entire new they're inventing entire new lines of fleets of drones and new cutting edge swarming drones, all kind of new missiles and detection systems, you name it. I mean, it's just like they've rapidly economically, industrially, and also technologically advanced, right? They have the most advanced. They already had, but they really have the most advanced military in the world, including nuclear as well. And anyway, long story short, the United States and Europe, literally, Germany could last maybe a day with the soldiers and the weapons they have. Britain, France, all these countries, they would not last at all. The NATO has basically, and the U.S. and NATO have given everything that they have to Ukraine. They don't have anything else to give. That's why they used cluster bombs recently. I mean, white phosphorus is already being used by the West, and that's banned under international law because of the horrible suffering and extreme excruciating burns it causes to people. But the U.S. and the West are using the cluster bombs in part, and they blew up a bunch of innocent people on a beach recently, and it was a horrible atrocity that they committed. Women and children and just and their families just on the beach on a holiday, and the U.S. dropped a cluster bomb on them, and which it's a bomb that explodes and it causes many submunitions that indiscriminately kill. So it's so deadly and the submunitions that remain are like dangers for any innocent civilians and children walking by. They could easily explode, right? So it was deemed an inhumane form of warfare. Now all of the warfare has a lot of inhumanity in it, but anyway, long story short, they're doing that because the West is done. It's cooked, as the young people say. And it's militarily cooked. It's economically cooked. The United States and Europe and its allies are defeated. They just don't know it yet, right? And so, anyway, let me get back to the main topic. And so that is causing the psychological, that adds to the psychological decline, because you're like, no, we can't be losing this war. We have to win. We're going to win. We're going to win in Ukraine. We're going to do it. We're going to win in Ukraine. Like that guy just said. What did that guy just say? Like, if ISREAL falls, the entire West will fall. Right? What did that guy say? Let me see if I can find that one. Because that is a level, that is such a statement indicative of the psychopathy and the cognitive decline and the extreme desperation of the Western mental illness. What was it? See if I can find that quote. Yeah, this guy right here, right? He said, "If Israel fall, Jerusalem posters." Wait. Okay, I'm gonna try not to say everything, but if ISREL falls, the West falls. Geert Wilders is Europe's last stand against Islam. If you have to support the horrible atrocities that the vast majority of the world has seen live streamed, I see people around the world. There's a Vietnamese person just denied a restaurant service to people from ISRAEL. There are indigenous people, black people in Africa, in the United States. I have seen everybody I have heard. I try to listen to as much of a planet-wide diverse information diet as I possibly can. And everything that I hear from everywhere around the world is, I am just like exhausted seeing all of these dead children. I gotta make this just almost like, obviously for the children, but like every day I just seeing all of these horrific child unalivings, and like Malaysia, Philippines, everywhere in the world. It's just like everybody is exhausted, enraged, furious, and like this has to stop. This has to stop, and this horrible, just almost unbelievably evil. Although it's just really Western culture. That's what the U.S. did everywhere to every native people at some point or time, that they killed and destroyed and displaced through colonialism. But everybody is demanding, right? With the exception of people that are still diehard, steadfastly pro-American, pro-Western, pro-European, right? Everyone is demanding, no, we must stop this now. But the West, in all of its presidents, all of its leaders, continue to say, if our horrible, disgusting, child destroying project falls, then we fall. What's really sad is that is the truth, because ISREAL is the West. That is looking at who Europe, that's who the United States literally they have done exactly those things all over the Middle East. You go back to, obviously, when the Europeans first landed in Plymouth Rock, when they came to South America with the conquistadors in the Spanish, what they did everywhere, what they did in Africa, what they did in the Congo under King Leopold II. These are the things. The ISRAEL is Western culture. It is the spirit of the West. It is America, and that's like sad, right? But when you say things like, like Joe Biden said, right? When you say things like, hey, we rule the world, and when we went to Iraq, we did it to liberate and save you and make you moral. You were, every American who believed and said that and acted with that, to whether they were, moving the Excel spreadsheets for these huge military companies, moving electrons around in a systems analyst position, or they were pulling triggers on the ground in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam, right? Everyone participated in the same atrocities that we are witnessing in the Middle East. Every Westerner participated in those same atrocities, whether they admit it or not, whether they are on the ground or not. They have always been participating. Every American, every European, every Canadian, every Australian, and everyone else who throws behind that system, the colonialist, capitalist, Western system, you have been participating. We have been participating in those atrocities for the last thousands of years. And that's gonna, that like just blows your entire identity out. Like, the difference in 2024 is you can watch who you are in TikTok, right? When you see the dead children, you're seeing you're seeing your parents, you're seeing your ancestors, you're seeing your British Empire, your French Empire, you're seeing your Europe, your feudal. It's really in the feudal era too, the whole era. Romans, your Greeks, you're seeing the proto-Western civilizations of antiquity. You are seeing who you are on TikTok. And it's hard to play the ability to maintain the dissociative cognitive dissonant, separation. The compartmentalization can't happen anymore. Right? That's why everyone in the West is feeling this rage and sadness and desperation, is because you can't break out the child slaughter from apple pie democracy, Europeanness, Starbucks, Walmart, Disneyland, the what is that? The Eurovision contest. You can't see the NATO flag. You can't see the American flag. Even Jewish people saying, I don't even want to be known as Jewish anymore. I'm seeing many Jews say, I don't want to be that anymore. And like, that's not because like if you're Jewish you're just evil because of something in your ethnicity and in your blood or something, right? But like you have to accept what ISRAEL is doing, and also like as part of a history of whiteness, even as a Jewish person, but a Jewish white person, you have your own legacy there, and you can see it. You can see who you have been. Even as a Hawaiian person, if you're a Hawaiian person, but then you act as an agent of the empire. I mean, you can say, well, I was brainwashed into participating in this Western imperial colonial project, right? If you can say that, but my parents are Hawaiian and they were harmed, and then you sign up for the military, and then you went to Iraq and you went to Afghanistan and you went around the world and you pulled triggers, and now you're an unhealed descendant of the Greco-Roman trauma too, and now you're part of the child killing. And so in one sense, like that, it is good, and it is the fever before you begin to get better from the flu. This multi-thousand-year COVID, or not really COVID because you don't necessarily get better, right? The multi-thousand-year flu. The fever of, oh my God, how am I going to get a job next year when I got to apply to university and I have to lie about my politics? Oh my God, how can I even shop at McDonald's or Starbucks or get food at the grocery store when all of it has corporations that support child killing? That's the fever of your body is trying to figure out a way to deal with the inability to separate out and do the split personality where you put all of the evil acts to support everything you do, and your entire history, culture, religion, your identity, your livelihood, your economic, your cultural, your church, everything. You put that on one side. All the evil things just go into this closet full of skeletons. And then you put, all the good things, like, look at this great bake sale my church did. Look at this wonderful pistachio, tastes great. Never mind, it's stealing all of California's water and all the money is going to ISRAEL, right? Oh, this is such a great McDonald's Big Mac. I love the you know what I mean. And then you put what it's doing, but now you can't, right? Now it's all coming together, and it's like intellectual honesty after multi-thousands of years of dishonesty is going to be incredibly painful. It is incredibly painful. It's tiring. It's exhausting. It hurts. It makes you poorer. You know, getting poorer is actually a symptom of healing in an unjust capitalist horrific system that gives the wealthiest all the resources and all the most immoral, right? And it's, I mean, I'll say it's good to be poor, but I mean, it is a natural it is a consequence of resisting and not being bought off as a stormtrooper of the empire. You know, it's a natural consequence. And like struggling through that with your fellow healing Western American, your fellow healing stormtroopers going, hey, can we all work together and build some kind of community garden, or like let's have mutual aid funds, and let's all support each other. Our Patreon, let's figure out some, I don't know, barter system, whatever you got to do. Let's all support, let's try to support each other. Let's all shop at the, you know, the Lebanese coffee shop. You know, let's do whatever we can to try to get as much of our economic activity out of this sick, you know, project that's doing all of this child killings I'm watching on my phone, right? It's really like, it has to be that way. We have one day everyone will thank the Palestine. I mean, it's hard to say that, you know, but everyone will thank the sacrifices that they have made, right? To give the dosages of medicine to the unhealed descendants of the Greco-Roman trauma, to give the Imperial stormtroopers the medicine they really need, to teach a lesson, you know? I think one day people will look back and go, oh my God, if it wasn't for all of as disgusting as it was, as sad and horrible as it was, if it wasn't for all of those eviscerated pictures of children that 8 billion people had to watch all day long, things might have gone a lot worse. Things might not have changed very much. People might not have, you know, because that, you know, again, the child killing has been happening for the last 5 centuries and way longer than that. The only difference is you watching it on the screen now. If there were TikTok during the Iraq War, you would have seen the same thing. If there was TikTok in the 1770s, you know, in Native Americans under white people, you know, if Andrew Jackson, if there were indigenous and black people, right, when Andrew Jackson was going through the East Coast of the United States, slaughtering Native women and children, you would have seen, it would have been the same reaction. Oh my God, why are these European immigrants just going to the huts and just slitting all the throats of all of these innocent people? If the British could be shown in New Zealand, right, early on, where they went to women and children of the Maori people in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and just slaughtered them, right? And there was a TikTok. If a Maori person held up a phone and said, oh my God, why are the British, I thought they were so good, I thought they were like great and civilized, why are they slaughtering all these innocent women and children? At any point in the last thousands of years, you could have taken, if there were Huawei phones or even Apple phones that weren't being censored by international digital, Fahrenheit 451. If there were phones at any point in the last 2,000 years of history, and you went to places that Greek, British, French, Roman, American, etc., Spanish people were gathering resources from, you could take a phone anywhere they were operating, and you could have caused massive, a massive identity crises for a lot of people, especially in times when people believe themselves to be better. I mean, sometimes the West has just been completely 100% infected by fascism, just unremorseful, conservative, colonialism. We're just gonna take it and we don't even care. We just like completely dehumanize ourselves, right? And that's like a deep psychosis that is it is always there in the background, where we're just gonna like delete our morality out of our head. I mean, it does happen. It happens. You see this. It happened in Germany. It happens. It's in the West. Because some of your family members are like, I don't even know how these people can be so hateful and so it's like they have no capacity for empathy at all, right? And the West has mastered like maximizing that in their culture. But but I don't believe that that's ever fully gone. If people actually see in their face all of what is required to maintain their living, and what their society, what their culture, what their families, what their uncles, what their brothers, what their parents, what their government is doing, because we see that today. We see that all around the world. Even people in Western countries are like they're revolted, and they're revolting, right? I mean, to the extent that they see that. Now, the people that still identify as strongly and with less cognitive dissonance as Americans and Europeans, they tend to be older. They tend to not be looking at those social media, right? That's why it's this, right? If you're on like the really controlled media like Facebook, or really controlled media like historical corporate media like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, TV, right? You're not going to see that, right? And so you're not going to get the medicine. So you just keep on like going, we're going to win any second now, and this is all justified, right? Anyways, I'm like way off Acolyte, so let me come back to that. But I feel like that's important to say in this moment that we're currently in. In Acolyte though, so that's like what's underlying a lot of this reaction about like, oh, again, they're destroying our Star Wars. If I just Googleite, I said Googleite. Acolyte is destroying the Jedi intentionally. Also, Acolyte is destroying the Jedi intentionally. Leslie Headland is celebrating Star Wars, or Acolyte, we're all swapping the Sith and the Jedi. Acolyte is bad. Well, this is coming from Forbes, which is the rich white man paper of note. More diversity, of course, whether or not we're giving others a good script to work with. That was one of the really upset dudes. Actually, I want to let's go into Acolyte. I talked a lot about the geopolitical, ultra real silver spook, educational moment. So let's go into the Acolyte, and slightly less serious things. This was an interesting discussion. And I say interesting with like a lot of grains of salt, like a whole salt mine full of salt. The long tragic Star Wars tradition of ruining the Jedi. Remember when the Jedi were cool? Now, like let's preface this, but let's always look. This is something we gotta always look at our source of like where we're getting this. This is obviously in Forbes, and Eric Kane, senior. If you're a senior Forbes contributor, right? This is like being the Goebbels of Emperor Palpatine. Okay, if you're a senior Forbes contributor, senior big Western Wall Street legacy, which is to say imperial media operator, is like being Emperor Palpatine's propagandist. Okay, so I mean, just gotta take that with you gotta take that with that salt right there. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm not saying that Eric is Captain Phasma. I'm not saying that. He would be really upset about that because he's probably a sexist. Anyways, not probably. Remember when the Jedi were cool? I don't blame you if you didn't. This is, jokes aside, this is literally what I'm talking about, right? Remember when the Jedi were cool, right? When you say, remember when the Jedi were cool, you're kind of saying was like, I long for that time when, like what I was saying, when we were number one. And you know who I mean when I mean we, right? This is the and I get it because I grew up in the 20th century. I remember Star Wars 4, 5, and 6. I liked them a lot, I liked them a lot when I was growing up. I mean, it's their formative memories. But it's the movies are entertaining. Things can be entertaining and have bad politics. In fact, the most successful brainwashing and propaganda is very, very entertaining, moving, well written, well acted, well scripted, and then it says really bad things and it makes you start wars, right? So I mean, and I'm not saying that Star Wars is bad because of that. I'm saying it doesn't it was made in the 20th century, and it doesn't say strongly enough what, if it wanted to actually be anti-imperialist and anti-war and anti all the things I'm talking about, it didn't get that point across. I don't not the way that I see it, and a lot of that has to do with, you know, and the constraints of the time it was made, and Hollywood and the United States and where it was. But you know, it's a movie from the 20th century, so yeah, I mean, it was cool, it was fun, it was entertaining. You know, Mark Hamill. I always remember when I think of a Jedi, I think of Luke Skywalker. You know, because that's when I was 3 or 4. I saw Empire Strike. I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater, and like I told this story before. We went to like the Silver Dragon. This doesn't even exist anymore. I went to the Silver Dragon Chinese food restaurant, and my dad got miso soup and for me. And he said, if you eat the miso soup, you'll turn into a Jedi. And I ate all the miso soup, you know. I didn't really like it at first. And he said, if you eat that miso soup, you will, I mean, it was weird and unusual, and it's got tofu in it. And I hadn't had that much food of that kind at that time. He said, if you eat that food, you will turn into Luke Skywalker and you will defeat the Empire. You know, it will make you a Jedi soup. And I was like, oh my God, I got to eat. And I ate the whole soup, and I was licking the bowl, you know. It's like, I have to become Mark Hamill. So I remember what that was like. You know, and it's a fun movie. It's also got like tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of white people and not much else. And you know, it's a fun kids movie, you know. And you know, there's an empire, but the empire it's not obvious, you know, what is actually being said within the movie, in the political sense. But you know, it's still a fun, entertaining movie, and it's still Star Wars. I mean, it pioneered so many cool special effects and the miniatures. It's actually a pretty low budget film. The lightsabers are really neat. You know, it's got lots of problematic aspects of the Orientalism, and you know, and like, you know, it's entertaining, but it's also of the 20th century during American and Western hegemony and imperialism, and it has that in it in the way that, you know, Acolyte doesn't. I mean, it's kind of like, again, when you just look at the covers, you know, I mean, actually, this actually has Carrie Ann Moss in it, so this is actually blending it together. Well, actually, he's saying that these Jedi are not good. These Jedi are not good. Remember when the Jedi were cool? I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I mean, you know, he's trying to say is that like you have to be like the original Luke Skywalkers or some older version of you have to look at the original Star Wars, you know. Anyway, let me move on from that point. It's been such a very, very long time long before Disney, Lucasfilm, and Star Wars, Indiana Jones and Willow. I've had this thought running through my head lately. You can have too much of a good thing. It's the whole less is more notion, and it applies in a very big way, not just to Star Wars, but to a lot of beloved fiction. Well, this is going into lots of other, you know, franchise, so I'm trying to get to that point. Actually, maybe this might not be the article I was looking for. Who you might, yeah, there was one where people were really upset about the Acolyte. Maybe this is not the right one. Is this the one where he talked about the kids? Shoot. Okay. I can't even find it. But you know, my point is that there's a lot of people that are really upset about the film. I think this is the wrong article. There's one where the guy basically said Acolyte is bad because the children are poorly written, and that was something that Holly and I were talking about. That was like, so, you know, part of the inequality that we're talking about and the non-democracy, including in the household, is that, you know, a lot of men are not expected to in the West, because of patriarchy, to do any at all of you know, the child rearing, taking care of children, right? It's not done. It's just kind of like, you know, it's not expected. Now, some people might do it, but it's not expected, and that's part of an unjust patriarchal misogynistic system, right? And then, but there's this guy who was reviewing the Star Wars, and he said the children are unrealistic because these children, the children's dialogue, like one child says, yes, the the Jedi are good, and the other child says, no, the Jedi are bad, and they're like arguing about whether the Jedi are good or bad. Let me see if I can find that. Shoot, I might not be able to find it. Yeah, actually, the Acolyte is good. Okay, I probably won't be able to find it. Okay, so I'll stop trying and distracting myself. But one of the kids says, "Star Wars, the Jedi are good." The other child says, "The Jedi are bad." And then the mom comes in and has to kind of break up the argument. But it's like this discussion, this dialogue is terribly written because, the thing is, like, that actually is how children talk. If you actually take on the societal responsibility of raising children and take time to be around children, right? But a lot of guys aren't, and not even some of them are not guys, but they're Western and more privileged, right? And the creators of the Star Wars show is actually a lesbian woman. She's in a relationship and they have kids, I'm pretty sure. And like the kind of the things that the kids say to each other when they're the kids with the two moms. There's a black force using witch mom, and then there's another I think she's another species. She's white, but she's like another species. She's like the same species, the same race as Darth Maul, right, with the spikes on the head, but not with the paint. And so these there's in a coven of force using all women society on this planet, that the Jedi are they come to try to take their kids from them, right? And the kids, so the way the moms interact with each other, right, was somebody saying like the way these parents are interacting is ridiculous, the way that they interact with their children is ridiculous, and point out like, the kids are acting up, the kids are they're having like a sacred Jedi ritual, and the kids like interrupt the ritual and start fighting and like bickering with each other, like, give me that, no, you give me that, like, you don't even use the force right, they're going back and forth, and this it's a white man author for like a major Western news site reviewing Acolyte was like, this was an example of the bad writing, this is an example of it being unrealistic, this is why Acolyte's bad. It's not because I'm a sexist, racist, or I don't know, I have internalized sexism and racism, and I just want to see myself reflected as a white man in the Star Wars that I used to see myself reflected in automatically, and now that disturbs me, and so I'm coming up with post facto rationalizations for why I feel a way about this movie that I'm watching, and I'm gonna chalk that up to the writing being bad. I mean, this is like, it's like whether the writing is good or bad. I argue it's rarely ever the actual problem with shows. It's basically people are not, much of the time, people are really being honest. It's just like, especially more privileged people. You're having the mental health decline of Empire reaction, which is to go into denial, lash out, come up with made up reasons for why things aren't going your way, right? Which is it's kind of like going, well, if we just throw a little more weapons and bombs into these people's hands, or I don't know, everybody in that hospital must have been a horrible militant bad person, right? You're making stuff up, right? You're making stuff up to justify a not good system, and why you're losing. Like, well, Russia cheated, or something, right? It's kind of like the immigrants are taking my jobs. The thing is, non-white people disproportionately do all the actual essential labor. I mean, if you want to have an economy, you gotta have to go do some real work. You can't just sit around and complain about Star Wars and like coast off of your family's colonial wealth. That's part of why the West is falling apart. Is because a lot of people, especially more privileged people, white and men, are not doing like actual work. It's a lot of Indian people from India, in Canada, in Europe. It's a lot of African people. It's a lot of Central South Americans in the United States. I mean, you go to any even truck drivers. There's like all these trucker convoys where it's about, we're the real hardworking Americans, or we demand. It was about ending the, it had to do with COVID. These protests. But those people that were driving trucks these people were not actual professional truck drivers. These were not like the working class. These are people who had tons of money to buy fancy, expensive, non-working F-150s and huge hauling. Some of them had some huge hauling vehicles, but the people that are actually doing the majority of trucking are not white guys. There's actually a lot of women truckers. There's a lot of non-white Indian, South Asian truckers in Canada is where this happened, right? If you go into a actual GM factory, if you go into one of these Chrysler, you go into a Ford, Toyota factory in the U.S., there's a lot of women and there's a lot of non-white people in there, and it's like, why is that exactly? It's like there's no like one answer for that, but it's kind of like, again, that justification is like, which is like, you're all coming in here taking our jobs. Well, I mean, number one, you blew up our country. Number two, you don't want to do your job. You don't want to do your job. Like, go do your job. But why do young to middle-aged white men not want to, Western men not want to do their job? Because they've been spoiled by their capitalist colonial system and they haven't been trained, and they had generations of decay. This is the age of decadence, right? This is like watching the Western white man get mad about Star Wars and then play video games all day and not contribute almost anything. And some of them do, but then they, it's kind of 50-50 nowadays, Some of them do, but then they don't want to do any work outside of their 8 hour, or the 4 to 8 hour job, and they want to just kind of check their brain out. And like, but that is part of the West as well. Like, you can't just, because women got to go to a 4 to 8 hour job and then they come home and they do childcare. Right? The reality is you have the expectation that, people can just do your 4 or 8 hours, you do your your employee job, and then you can just check everything else out after that. That was unequal, because actually it takes more work than that, and parental care and maintaining the household, that's all extra work. I mean, like, and yeah, maybe under the 50s American extra patriarchal Stepford era, during the Cold War, maybe that could have been, it was never just, because it always meant women had to go be cooking and cleaning in-house slaves and childbearers, and that was never really fair to the women. And men had total financial control in that era. But that was part about that was the West buying off all of their middle classes to maintain racist capitalist colonialism, right? That was never really a fair system. That was always a artificial bubble, like everything else in the West, right? And also, it wasn't fair to the women. And now women are going, well, we actually want fairness now. We want fairness now. And then a good chunk, I don't know exactly, but a good chunk of the men, and I'm hearing this in a lot of places, is there, and I've talked about this before, the crisis of the men, right? Why are they not having sex? Is a lot of them are just going, well, I'm used to as a white man, as a Western man, I'm used to getting away with doing an unfair amount of the labor, both in the job, in the workplace, and in the household, and just getting my way, because it's a white man's world, right? And because most white men didn't work very much in the offices that they worked in. They just showed up in the office, they talk golf, they talk shop, and then especially if they were more privileged, and they would just get a promotion. That's not working. Like showing up to the office and BSing with your buddies. I mean, I watched this happen. I worked in offices, and it was women and people of color that basically did all the work in the offices that I worked in Honolulu, and in Hawaii too, right? And the guys basically, the old boys just hung out, gave a few speeches, right? And fired people sometimes. And one guy even told me, he was honest. He said, I went to the same school as the current CEO, and he basically just hired me to he seems to just want to talk to me about football games and what a good time they had in Vegas. And I basically just kind of like sign people's timesheets, and I don't really do much of anything. He just said that. I don't do much of anything. I'm just here to be a buddy to talk to for the CEO who makes multi-six figures. And it was, and these are like, this is in Hawaii, right? This is not even in the United States, but Hawaii is Americanized. And so it's the same system. And then me and all the women of color, I'm almost a queer person, but queer people, people of color, women doing all the actual work. They bust in their butt. They work all day long, working. And so the children of those white guys expect to have some kind of good deal like that. Now, like, you could put in work, but it's not necessary. You can do a half-assed job like Biden and Trump, and you can like before these people were falling apart. They were never very efficient, competent people ever, right? And they could just get away with being a mediocre. Even Donald Trump was honest. Donald Trump said, I hired a woman to be my lead architect because you had to be 3 times hardworking, 3 times as proficient, 3 times as competent as any white man. Donald Trump said that. He just said it out loud. When asked about why did you hire a woman to take the lead on building your Trump buildings, because he knew, right? And I mean, now he's like, I'm not gonna say that too much, but I mean, like, I want to get the building made good. I'm gonna hire a woman to do it because I don't do shit. But that's where Donald Trump accidentally says the true thing. It's got, because he doesn't have he doesn't give a crap. He's an individual. He's a real Westerner. He's a real individualist. He doesn't have solidarity with the whole empire. He's like, I'm gonna do. He's definitely he cares about himself more. Really, really, really took that selfish individualism to heart. And he's just like, I do whatever I possibly can for myself. Biden is more like, I'll do whatever powerful people tell me to do. As evil as it is, I don't care. Right. So that the tension in empire, those are the two parties. Sometimes it's like people who will do everything for themselves, and people who are like, we should keep this empire going a little longer. It's like it's slightly more long-term selfishness versus like, I'm gonna do right now whatever is best for me right now, even if it blows this whole empire up. Like, I'll blow up this. I will steal. You can imagine that when this happens, right? I'm gonna steal the fusion core out of this Star Destroyer and sell it for profit, right? Versus the other person on the Star Destroyer going, wait, let's pilot the Star Destroyer to the Ewoks planet, blow up a bunch of Ewoks, and take all the resources out of their Endor, right? And the other guy's going, well, no. If I steal the fusion core, I'll make like a ton of money when I sell it off on the black market, right? And that's Donald Trump. Now, when you do that, you're gonna screw up the Star. You break the Star Destroyer. It's gonna crash. It's gonna run out of power, right? But it's for you. It's a good deal for you personally, just you, right? But for the Empire, if you pilot the Star Destroyer to the Ewoks planet, kill a bunch of Ewoks, right? Or Palestine, or Afghanistan people, or if Vietnamese, right? Or black or brown, or if you're Roman, if you go to the Levant region as a Roman and kill a bunch of people, and then Jesus gets mad and resist your empire. That's actually what it is. A Palestinian. Jesus was a brown Palestinian guy resisting Western Empire, right? But if you take the Star Destroyer and you do the empire's bidding, you can make money as a part of the empire, and then you keep the empire going, and then so next year you can make some money. Now, but you can make you could maybe you could make more money for yourself if you. Personally, just for you, if you rip out the fusion core and then you sell it. So that's the difference between Trump and Biden. And that's why, in one sense, it's kind of like, I don't really care how many Republicans. In that sense, it's kind of like on a global scale. In global scale, people don't really care because they know that the president doesn't make much of a difference in terms of who runs the country. It's run by plutocracy. It's run by money. It's run by special interests, and it's catastrophically cacophonously, right? Which is to say, it is discordantly. It is many different wealthy interests simultaneously seeking their own personal benefits. It's very chaotic. But it does tend to move in the direction of maintaining the empire is better than destroying it for a lot of the time. But there's always selfish interests that will sabotage it. It's a den of thieves. There's no trust, right? So like any one of them, someone can like do something, right? Like, I don't know. Hey, starting a war with Iran and with Lebanon and with Yemen, that's not a good idea actually for the survivability of the empire. But some individuals within it are going, well, it's good for me right now. Maybe I'll survive a little. I'll stay out of jail a little longer, right? I'll make a little more money. I don't care. I don't care how long you. I mean, some and so so all of that conflict causes it to is and as the U.S. in the West declines, those kind of stealing the chandeliers out of the burning building is going to increase. The taking all the expensive china out of the sinking Titanic effect is increasing, right? Taking all of Western culture, all of your books and songs. I just read Bandcamp is all going to be thrown into AI. This sucks. But everything on the internet, all the Western content. Let's take all the Disney, all the movies, all the shows. Let's take all the Star Wars. Let's take it all, and let's just like throw that into the Chat GPT, Sora. The last and greatest hope. It's like generative AI, the new hope. That's no hope. There's no hope in that. But let's take all of our music, art, writing, books, everything. Let's all throw it into AI and see if we can get some money out of that. Maybe we'll get a shrimp crab Jesus next time we pump that in. Maybe we can get like a lightsaber wielding Facebook shrimp cozy crab and crew Jesus out of that. And then we make some money from that. Maybe we'll have another. Maybe the last 10 non-COVID annihilated, slightly more neurologically functional than Biden boomers. Maybe the last 50 million Americans and Europeans that believe this bullshit that we're the greatest, right? Maybe they'll watch a generative AI, video about, cyberpunk shrimp lightsaber Jesus with like a bunch of crucifixes and a Bible coming out of its ears, and they'll look at that picture and they'll be like, oh wow, yeah, I'm really gonna donate to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They're really gonna buy that bad AI generated propaganda, and that's gonna shore up the collapsing lack of revenue and the lack of utility that the generative AI, that's the last greatest hope of Western technological Silicon Valley, future. That there's no future in that. It's done. It's cooked. California's cooked because there's no water and there's no electricity to turn your AC on because it's all going to power AI generated neo crypto scams that are ruining the world and destroying everyone's minds along with the COVID. Anyways, so okay, back to Acolyte and we'll finish up. But yeah, so I mean, so the coven of witches that are using the Force was a really that's one of these things that is like breaking people's minds. Going, you have all women Force users. They're not even Jedi. They're all women Force users. You have a black woman. This is like the Uhura moment times 10, right? You have a. Not only is it like Captain Kirk and his black Starfleet officer Uhura having an interracial kiss, right? It's not only is that, right? It's an interracial kiss. They're both women. So there's a black woman and a black woman and a white woman. Interracial kiss. They have children together with no man involved. You have immaculate. Anakin isn't the great. So people are going, this is bad because Anakin was Force conceived by this. Anakin was when the XX duct tape chromosome and the XY duct tape chromosome, right? When the Force duct tape, did coitus with itself, right? Because the Force is duct tape, right? It holds the universe together. It has a light side and a dark side, and it holds the universe together. So when the two duct tapes mated, and then they artificially inseminated the baby into Anakin Skywalker's mommy, right? With this bad Jesus metaphor that George Lucas put in because he's a bad writer. I'm just kidding. But not really. He just ripped off Frank Herbert's Dune and made it slightly less shitty. Anyways, so when the duct tape mated and it put the Force baby inside of Anakin's mom on Tatooine, that was like the most important thing that ever happened in Star Wars. It wasn't like, it's like that was central to the Star Wars legacy. That makes Anakin the best, greatest, mightiest, most awesomest, most moralist just the truest, goodest Jedi ever. I see somebody argue that. I was like, Anakin turns into Darth Vader, right? But actually, that's very American though, right? Because like, Anakin is the best and the strongest, and he's just like, you break that when you have a bunch of women's. Just having women's anywhere. Why would you don't put women in all of my movies? I'm gonna get mad and I'm gonna like piss in my man diaper. I'm gonna go join Joe Rogan's. Scream at me and make me shovel poop. $50,000 man camp for failed Sons of Empire with too many yachts. Right? If you put another woman in my Star Wars, I'm gonna go to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, in an Ocean's Gate submarine. With all the money that my daddy gave me. Don't make me mad and put another woman in the Star Wars. Okay, now I'm hurting some fifis. Anyways, I can't afford an Ocean Gate submarine, so I'm just gonna go in this Mountain Dew tin can. Actually, a Mountain Dew can is probably more structurally, engineering-wise sound than an Ocean's Gate submarine or a Boeing plane or spacecraft. So you might as well just go in a oversized Mountain Dew can. Maybe like the 12,000 ounce Mountain Dew can. That's a good submarine to take. You use an N64 controller, just like the genius billionaire white guys who made the Ocean's Gate. By the way, I heard drowning is a good way to go. if the orcas don't get you for being a dickhead, the multi-thousand pounds per square inch pressure of the Mother Ocean will take you. Anyways, okay, enough jokes on their behalf. But people were mad because there were two women that had a child. It was an interracial couple that force conceived, so that's like Anakin is not unique. They conceive using the Force, whatever that means. I mean, a lot of people. I think a lot of women were like, "Wow, could we use the Force?" Because like, I mean, if I could just, if I can like, wave my hands around in the air and like carry a green puppet on my back and like, I don't know, do some laser sword fighting with a blindfold mask on, like Luke Skywalker and one of the characters from Acolyte. Then if I can conceive by getting good at laser sword fighting and running around with Yoda on my back, if I get good at the Force, it can give me baby. I think a lot of women would do that so they don't have to get with some of these crappy dudes. But anyways, the Force usage is a thing. When this sapphic lesbian couple, that's a whole thing. I have not seen now it's not extremely overt, gay couple, but the way that the black Force using coven leader mom and the other mom interact is like they're together. They're a couple. Like they're like touching each other's faces tenderly. The way they talk about parenting decisions, they're like, it's as somebody in a similar relationship to that, like it's like it's so believable. It's actually like the Acolyte is actually the best writing. It's arguably the best, most realistic writing I've ever seen in a Star Wars. Star Wars is. I mean, I don't need Star Wars to be realistic. I mean, Star Wars isn't really about the quality. I mean, come on, let's be real, man. This is a kids show, and I'm not saying kids shows have bad writing, but I mean, it's not about like, the depth of it's not about the moving, just amazing, just groundbreaking, Academy Award winning, screenwriting and the amazing erudite and just pathos filled, acting. You're not making, this isn't a Jordan Peele movie, this isn't Get Out, this isn't, this isn't Oscar bait, and it's not about, I'm not saying the writing is bad, but it's like, that's not like what people come to for the Star Wars. I want to see some people swing laser swords around, and I want to see some cool aliens walking around and robots bleepity blooping through the streets of some unknown alien planet with 3 suns and 2 moons and Jawas. I want to see some Wookiees. I want to see some it's just like it's like a theme park for children. I mean, it's like it's one step above the McDonald's ball pen that doesn't exist anymore. It's a movie, and it's a kids movie, you know. Anyway, so it's not in the kids shows, you know. Part of the problem, you know, as Alan Moore once pointed out, is that you have people who should be far more grown up at the current age that they are, and it's a bad reflection on the society that you have vast swaths of people who have not grown up. They still have a mentality of a child, of a very spoiled child, despite being in a 25, 35, 45, 55-year-old body, you know. And so it's kind of like, and those are the people who tend to be mad about the Star Wars, obviously, right? And so anyway, so, you know, number one, don't expect that. But number two, it's also like the Star Wars, the writing between the parents is like very realistic, because I mean, I know, because we've experienced this, we've been through this. The way that children are were written, as I was alluding to earlier, where one of them says, "Hey, you know, the Force is good," and the other one's like, "Oh no, sorry, the Jedi are good," and the other person's like, "The Jedi are bad." "No, they're good." No, they're bad. You don't know anything, right? And then the mom says, you know, it's not about being good or bad. It's about power and who is allowed to use it, who is allowed to wield it, right? And like, you know, that's actually very important. That's actually like that is a perspective that we don't, you know, that is a global South perspective, you know, that is the colonized person perspective, right? It's like, because the West talks about good and evil and who is good, and if you're on the good side, then you are in the right, and then you are justified in what you're doing. And if you're on the evil side, then you are not justified. You must be eliminated. You must be destroyed, right? Like that's like, that is as I alluded to, like, that's part of the mental illness of the West, which is that, like, we are the good side, we're the right side, we're the Western side, we're America, we're European, right? We're the Middle Eastern unsinkable aircraft carrier. We're the good people. We have to be good. No matter what we do, anything we do, it's always good. We can kill children, it's always good. We steal children, kill children, blow up hospitals, blow up school, it's always good, because we are unmovably, immutably, forever. No matter what we do, we're the good people. Why? Some person in the sky said so, that we made up, you know? Why are we good? Well, I mean, just look at us. Look at our skin color. Look at our genetics. Look at our DNA, and look at our inbuilt talents. Just look, you know, and it's like, that's like, you know, there's something wrong with that. That's, you know, that's like what the Yahtzees with the end did, you know, like, no, what are you talking about? No, we're just better because we are. Because why? Because well, I mean, obviously my parents and my school and my history class and my government and my culture and my society told me that. I mean, your society is, you know, but anyway, so, but when you say it's not about who is good and it's not about who is good and who is bad. It's about power and who is allowed to use it, right? It's actually a different perspective than what we are often seeing in movies and also in Western culture. Which is that, like, because some people say, oh, when the people in the Middle East, you know, that are not on America's side, look at all the horrible things they've done. Look, do you condemn these people? Do you condemn those Arabs, right, that are doing a resistance, right, doing a justified under international legal resistance that is enshrined within the UN, in fact, right? Even international law experts will tell you this. But then the West will still go, but no, it doesn't matter. The international law doesn't matter, because when we do things, we're right? You can't use international criminal court. I mean, I don't care what the court said. When you're European and you're American, everything you do is right. You can't take us. You can't stop us, because we're just so right. In fact, we will attack the court. The U.S. actually has a military plan to attack and destroy the international criminal courts in Europe if they attempt to just invade and crush The Hague if they attempt to hold them to account, right? And the Europeans all know that. They're like, some of them are like, we better make America happy and do evil things for them, and do the empire evil things for them, like, you know, keep sending our money and weapons and people into their wars, or they'll get mad and attack us, you know. And some people are like, no, I mean, America and we're all the same. We're all the great Western white people, and we deserve to crush and kill and blow up anyone, and nobody can hold us to account ever. Because I mean, every time we kill and crush, when we do all these things, it's all good because it just is good, right? And so this all this insisting you must condemn the other, you must condemn that side, you must condemn that side is trying to maintain the good evil, which is what the Jedi are doing. They're like, we are the good, and the dark side is the bad, and we have to stop them. We're in an eternal war with the bad side, and we have to constantly crush and stomp them out of existence, so that Lockheed Martin executives can keep on making billions of dollars. I mean, I'm sorry, to make sure that the world is not full of evil. You know, I mean, that's like built in, and so this other perspectives that like we don't condemn people who are resisting actual evil and actual oppression using force. People that are responding using power against people using power, like whether that's in Africa, right, against apartheid, which used violent force, by the way. Nelson Mandela was classified as a terrorist until the late noughties by the United States, and whether that was in Vietnam, right, using force against including violent force against a horrible malicious force using violence against you, is oftentimes the only final option that you have left to liberate yourself, right? And so the Jedi, by going to planets and taking all of the people who have power away from them, this is why I say it's very much it's a story of ethnic minorities out. Is a non-Western story. By taking the power out, taking all the force users out of this women's society, by taking all the force users out of Asia, taking all the force users out of these other societies, bringing them into the Jedi. This is about taking all the resources, right? It's like taking all the uranium out of Niger. It's like taking all of the coltan and copper out of Central South America. It's like taking all of the labor and all of the semiconductors out of Asia. It's like taking all of, and sticking it in yourself, making your weapons with it in the Empire, right? The Jedi are the Empire, ultimately. The Jedi are just like the A-team. They're like the elite military forces of the air. They're like the elite military forces of the Empire, They're like the death squads in South America, They're like they're like the Army Rangers, in Afghanistan, They're going around, they're like the CIA. That's what the Jedi are. They're the bodyguards for imperialists that are the stolen, and they make sure that they have all the power for the empire that they run, even though they don't call it that, inside of themselves, right? And they justify this all by saying, well, we are the good side, and you are out there, you are all like fallen, degenerate people you're all the children of you're all Amalek, you're the dark continent, you're all savages. The United States Constitution said we have to be saved from these merciless Indian savages, right? So basically, but that's just Europeanism, right? Which is everyone who isn't us, that's Western. Everyone who isn't us is evil. And we are the good Jedi force, and we will all come and take everything that you have, so we can defend the good people from all of you evil people out there, you bad people out there, right? And then but the other side of that is that, like, well, what makes you good? Well, I mean, we don't have emotions and stuff. That's it. That's basically that's George Lucas's white man bullshit, which is like, not having emotions is bad because I don't have, as a white American man, as a cis white American boomer man, I never have any emotions, except I get angry all the time, and I gaslight women, and I pretend like that's not an emotion, right? When women and people of color call me out on the oppressive structures in the world, I get super emotional and mad, and then I accuse them of being emotional, and I use that to shut them up. And but other white men like me talk about not having emotions, right? That's just liberalism. It's called don't rock the boat of imperialism and evil that maintains a white men's and Western money and power and hegemony, and accuse everyone who tries to change that system of being violent and emotional and bad, and that we have to take from them everything they have, so we can keep them nice and unemotional. So actually, the Jedi is just like it's a horrible idea, but it's a nonsensical idea cooked up by some, acid tripping white guy who made a bad Vietnam metaphor that didn't land, about why people should just like not have emotions and stuff, and don't get angry because you might do something bad. Don't get angry because you are angry because we're calling you out, white man, on doing something bad. You're already angry, number one. So again, this is the cognitive dissonance, this is the psychosis, Western psychopathy and psychosis. You're already mad, number one. Number two, you're already doing the worst things in the world, right? But the Jedi tell Anakin Skywalker, right, the great savior. The Jedi tell Anakin Skywalker, they kidnap him, number one, just like they kidnap the young black girl, May, and her sister, from the lesbian black coven of possibly communists. They also have trans women in their coven as well. So number one, you're kidnapping children, right, to go work in your empire and do the worst evils in this entire system. Because ultimately, Jedi do literally become the empire. The Jedi, the system they work for, is the empire, and it just becomes a mask off empire later on. Like the Jedi have the full TikTok off. The TikTok, it's really like what you could read the whole Star Wars legacy. This is not the point of it, but if you could reread it as like, that when the Jedi are in power and they claim to help the so-called Republic maintain goodness, right, within it, right. This was just the pre-TikTok empire, where people thought that they were in the good place, right? And then when Emperor Palpatine comes into power, that's the post-TikTok when you can see all the dead babies. Oh my God, we're the worst. What the? But you are always the worst, right? It was more efficient before everybody could see what you actually are, right? And the Jedis are the fake good face on the face of all of this evil. That's one way to read it. I'm not saying that. I'm reading a lot of things into this, but it's also like, it's just like the idea that, but that is canon though. It's like Luke, Anakin. If you have being a good person means being a emotionless white man, just like George Lucas, which is false and bullshit, and this liberal propaganda to stop the people resisting actual evil empire that use the greatest amount of violence, and the people resisting to use even require violence to resist historically, empirically, where in Africa, Asia, Latin America, that's the story of their resistance. Whether that's the Chinese Revolution, the African Revolution, the Vietnamese kicking out the French and the Americans, today, as we speak, if it wasn't for October 7th, whatever you think, the West would not be collapsing the way that it is. The illegal GENOCIDAL project in the Middle East would not be falling apart if it wasn't for their resistance. And yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't holding a sign. It wasn't holding a sign. The Palestinians didn't vote. They didn't hold a sign. They didn't have a long discussion in a parliament somewhere. They didn't have an art fest and just like sing a dance, a kumbaya, and have some Palestinian tell a tragic story to just like nodding, white dreadlock audiences going, oh, that's really sad. Oh my God, that's so sad. Here's a handful of dollars, and then I hope that your country gets better. And then they walk away and go back to brunch, right? No, that's not. You can get mad, and you should. That being a Westerner means being mad at people like me telling you the truth, right? And you're having an emotion right now, and then telling other people you're being emotional, and then you cut all their heads off because they got emotional legitimately, because you're emotional, you're more emotional than them, and they're having the legitimate emotion of anger, the legitimate fear of being fucking blown up by you by an airstrike, and then they're getting angry at you, and then they're joining the resistance, right? And their legitimate justified anger and their resistance but that's the problem, not the fact that you're blowing up all the little babies that we're watching on the TikTok, right? That's deep mental illness, that's Western again. And so, like, so George Lucas is just a liberal. I mean, it's not because there's something particularly wrong with George Lucas, but he's just a liberal white guy. He's just a stormtrooper, doing the job of the empire, which is to pretend like it was all Russia and China and other people who dress up in frog march, march around in gray, or like it's like taking bad videos of Nazi actual concentration camps in Poland and then dressing those up where they actually had torture dungeons and then saying, oh, this is what Russia was doing and the communists always have done this and the Soviet Union did this, and then putting in a grayscale on that. And that the stormtroopers, they don't resemble America. This is the problem with Star Wars. The Empire in Star Wars should have elections. It should have, the Empire should have elections because America has elections. Because Rome had because Greece had elections. It should have elections, right? It should have a lot of colors in it. I mean, it should. I mean, America has red, white, and blue. Now it's got a lot of white houses and a lot of, but it's so drab and gray in the Empire. But the Empire should look like America. It should have Mickey Mouse ears on it. There should be lots of marketing. There should be 57 flavors of ketchup. There should be like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the Empire. But the Empire doesn't look like the real world Empire. That's why Star Wars is a waste of time, for actually telling any real story. But now, of course, if you made Emperor Palpatine and the Death Star look like, and the Empire look like America, people will get really mad, right? But I mean, now they're getting mad. So we finally got some good Star Wars. Anyways, but that's a big part of, and that theme of kind of like who has the power and power. It's not about who's good or who's bad. It's like who has where is the power and who has the ability to use it, right? And now ultimately, like in a grander sense, if you are resisting your own children being kidnapped, right? To be clear, Native Hawaiian children were kidnapped by the United States. They were brainwashed, like Uncle Walter Riddy, right? Like our main Hawaiian leaders, all of Hawaiians, our kids, were raised by the U.S. illegal occupation and brainwashed to go and join. Literally, if you graduated from Kamehameha School, one of the biggest Hawaiian attended schools, you were expected to go straight from that school, straight into the military, straight to Vietnam, straight to Korea, straight to Vietnam, straight to Iraq, Afghanistan. Indigenous people and people of color, we are way overrepresented in the military because of the way that our children are literally kidnapped to go into the military. They're brainwashed. The military comes into our communities. The military recruiters all come. They target us. They target our poor black and brown families and indigenous families. And they throw us straight into the cannon fodder, and come back with all the damage, psychological damage, knowing all the evils that you're participating in, getting all your limbs blown off, being disregarded from society. We are overrepresented in that. And a lot of us are very upset about that. Korea, like the main character is a star. He's actually from Squid Games, right? But Korea, the entire country of Korea is just cannon fodder for America. The entire military, every BTS, every K-pop star, whether you are dancing on a stage for millions of adoring fans, or you are a janitor or a cook, or you're cooking your bok choy and you're making your bibimbap in a Korean restaurant. Every Korean, right? Every Korean is required to do mandatory United States Empire service. It is U.S. Empire service mandated for this multi-tens of millions of person country. It's one of the big. It's a huge country, right? And what is that exact? It's a huge amount of people, right? In Korea, it's actually a lot more than you think. I mean, it's got South Korea population, right? 51 million people. Every single one of those people are cannon fodder for America, whether they realize it or not. A lot of them do, and they're very upset. The United States has a plan, and it has historically, and it already destroyed, to kill 2 million people. It just horrible atrocities were killed into there. Everyone in Korea is expected. They're all kidnapped. Everyone in South Korea is kidnapped to do the empire's bidding by the Jedi bodyguards. They're called American military trainers. They come into Korea. They train you. Everyone is there is forcefully brainwashed by pro-U.S. propaganda. Their leaders are all bought off and owned by U.S. imperial interests. Right? Even K-pop bands are having their own Western, even fans around the world, including in the United States. The young people that like the K-pop bands are boycotting because their own bands have Western leadership that is supporting the child killings in the Middle East. And so the Western fans are like, but the reason why is that happening? Why would you have a Korean supporting these things, right? Why are they building all these weapons in their country to send off to Ukraine and Israel, right? Because that the entire country of Korea is kidnapped. So in one sense, like, and this guy, the main one of the main characters, the Korean guy in the center, he is actually a kidnapped child. He is himself is a kidnapped child of empire in that sense, because he has to do mandatory. The entire Korean military is commanded by the United States. They have no autonomy. They're not democratic, as I said, right? So the entire country is a kidnapped country, and there are plans, many plans, they train and they practice for mass, big scale warfare. It's one of the plans for the U.S. to disrupt China, right? Huge scale warfare between South Korea, North Korea. Now I don't know if that's going to work now, but this is where they're always pushing. South Korea, some part of China, South Korea, Japan and South Korea are both, in Okinawa even more so. But these are all subservient subjects of the empire of the West, right? They don't really like Asians at all. They're just like, but it's kind of like, who cares if we kill all the Asians? Who cares? Even Slavic people. That's why they don't care about Ukraine. As long as Tony Blinken, the U.S. leadership, they've all said behind closed doors, they'll say, yeah, the main thing is that lots of Russians die and lots of Slavic people die. Fight to the last Ukrainian. If we tank Russians' economy, destroy Russia's military, and kill a lot of Russians and Slavic people in the process, hey, that's all that matters. And we make a lot of money doing that. The same thing for Koreans. No, they don't care about Koreans. They don't care about Japanese. They don't care about anybody in Asia. They don't even care about their own American white citizens, right? They care a little bit more because they want to maintain white supremacy. But ultimately, the people that run the West, they don't give a shit about any of these people. And so it's extra poignant because this is one of the Star Wars you actually start to see, in the representation of people in the world, African, Asian people, these are the people that have actually suffered the most in Empire, right? The problem with Star Wars Episode 4 is you didn't see enough Black and Asian people that actually and people actually suffering under the Empire, resisting Empire. Or you didn't. It's just a imperialist jingoist bullshit fest at that point. Everybody's like, oh yeah, go Luke Skywalker, go America. Nobody saw. No, I mean, only a handful of people who were at the Vietnam War protests and actually stuck around a little longer than after they no longer were in direct threat of being drafted as a middle-class white dudes, right? Because that's only the Vietnam was only protested because it forced a bunch of middle-class white dudes. If Vietnam War didn't have a draft, I mean, America could have just gone along, coasting along, killing Black and brown people and enslaving the planet a little longer, right? But it's really because of the draft, where I thought I was just going to have a cushy job in an air-conditioned office cooking up Coca-Cola ads and feeding off of the blood money of dead Arabs for the rest of my life. I thought I was going to liquidate Africa, Asia, and Latin America and get a cut as a middle-class white dude, right? Surrounded by women and people of color doing all the work while I hang around the water cooler and bullshit about the golf game. You mean I got to go fight the war? That's the only reason why that's one of the major reasons why the anti-Vietnam War and a lot of that action started to happen. Otherwise, it probably would, it's kind of like, good job, thanks for doing the draft. In that sense, if the U.S. did another draft, I mean, it might be a good thing because the U.S. would explode. There would be no America left at that point. I have made a whole video about what I think about why the draft won't work. But long story short, the Vietnam War, it was a period where was a period of resistance, and a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say that all of it. I'm not saying that every person who was against the Vietnam War was doing it for wrong reasons, but let's be real, a lot of people were. And a lot of people were like, I truly don't believe in the imperialism, and I feel bad for the plight of the Vietnamese people under the U.S. backed South Korean military, and our forces killing them, and that would be a real reason, right? Obviously, Donald Sutherland was like out there for that, and people who actually went to prison and were arrested, along with the Black civil rights movement leaders, and the other activists. I mean, that. I mean, that you definitely have to have a level of solidarity to be giving up your freedom for that, right? At the same time, there was a lot of self-preservation involved in that process, and there was not enough of a radical solidarity. I mean, if there was enough of a radical solidarity, the U.S. would have ended its empire. The citizens of America would have ended the empire, but they haven't yet. right? A lot of them they got a cushy job, and now they're kicking children. Now they're the people that now the boomer and Gen Xers are a lot of that generation. They're breaking the fishing poles of young children, right? And they're going, why aren't when they're fishing in the neighborhood, and they're going like, why aren't kids out in the park anymore, right? They're the people that are like calling the cops on kids in a playground. They're the kids. They're the people that are holding on to the 5-6 houses that they don't need, and they're taking vacations like every month. And then having 6 empty houses, right? And then getting mad. Why don't kids have their own house nowadays, right? I mean, these people. These are the more privileged of the boomer and Gen X generations, right? These are the still people who believe in the American project. They're selfish, just small. They themselves are selfish, small-hearted people, produced by empire, liberals, a lot of them, and then they produce a lot of spoiled brats who are mad about the Star Wars that doesn't have the people that look exactly like them across the board in all their Star Wars. And anyway, so that's I think I talked about this long enough. It's 1:47. I gotta go. So long story short, there's lots of other positive things I could say. There's also but I think that Acolyte, obviously I'm if you can figure out how to not give big horrible entities money, I mean, do that, but it's kind of like I gotta, sometimes I gotta do a review of something. So give like actual indie anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, cooperative creators money if you as much as you can, and not the entities that don't need it. But at the same time, it's kind of like these are like, I mean, it's like everybody is watching this, talking about this, so I kind of want to talk about those aspects of it. I want to talk about like because the discussion is relevant beyond just the lore and the universe of Star Wars. This applies to everything this applies to the world in a way. And it's like, what ideal would be is if we, as I talked about, I made another video, right, where I said like what we need is we need a non-GENOCIDAL system of entertainment, ecology of entertainment where we can get people like Nicola Coughlan that will. So I hope that she gets more shows and more. Somebody get a bunch of directors, and let's get directors, actors, and all of the people and writers to come together to get like anti-GENOCIDAL Hollywood, or just movie and entertainment ecology in industry, and let's it's again, this is part of the growing pain. This is a part of the getting well from the mental illness of Western of the Western psychosis, which is that it's gonna be, oh my gosh. She actually made a movie, a show called A Big Mood, which is kind of about that. Like everything is really hard right now in all the ways you possibly can imagine, right? But again, that's part of the fever coming out, getting better from the viral infection of the West, right? And part of that is getting better is struggling to build a non-GENOCIDAL, a non-imperial system of entertainment. That's gonna take a lot of creativity, right? I mean, there's also obviously this generative AI that's just like eating all of the work. That's putting extra pressure, but that's good. Generative AI is horrible. It's spicy. I have whole videos about that. Spicy autocomplete is not good, but in the sense that it is pushing everybody to really figure out alternatives to a failing system. That may be the only silver lining of generative AI, because it is nightmarish for everything, right? As I point out frequently. Other than that, and on top of that, plus, right? Because all the major corporations are going, we don't need you anymore. We don't need you anymore. We're not going to use you anymore. We're just going to pay a robot to generate a Willy Wonka land BS horrible script, and we're going to have really bad, stiff, non-acting, do all the acting. Hollywood and all the Western corporations are never going to hire any actors ever again, or writers or artists. And then there'll be like a non-spicy autocomplete, right? Degenerative AI, degenerative AI, entertainment ecology that has to arise from that. I think that's like one of the important things that we need to do. Anyways, so but yeah, there's a coven with interracial couples, the trans moms. The mothers are super. Also, the way that the parents discuss the children. Last thing I want to say, the way the parents discuss, like one of the child acts up, and then one of the moms says like, you have to be tough. You have to punish her for this because if she doesn't, she's never gonna get better at her force using. And the other mom says, well, she's just a different person. We have to not unschool her, but we have to let her be who she is. This is part of her personality. I don't want to crush that out of her by being too hard on her, right? So that is a real discussion that real human beings have, doing real adult things like parenting and continuing a civilization. Like those are real, and those are not resolved either. These are real discussions that people have outside of a racist, capitalist, colonialist, patriarchal crap hole, right? In the multipolar world, as another example, like in the multipolar world, in the non-imperial world, people are having discussions in the BRICS. People are talking about, hey, how are we going to balance the needs? You have a lot of we're giving you a lot of resources, India. We're not getting a lot back. What are we going to do about that? Hey, we have some historical differences culturally here between these, China, India. We got to work this out. We need to figure out the environmental problems. We're having a lot of fires. We're having a lot of water. We need under-desertification. Hey, these people down here, we need to rapidly develop. How can we do that? Like these are all problems that Africa, the Chinese or China, Russia, India, African countries, Arab countries, Iran, South American countries, Central America, Cuba, Venezuela. These are things that all these countries have to work out. Climate, there's pandemic, right? There's illnesses, there's there's internal disagreements within countries, historical wrongs, right? Environmental problems, over pollution, droughts, right? These are real problems, and then people disagree what exactly should we do about these problems. And those are real adult on a grander scale. Those are real adult discussions that people need to be having, right? Now the discussion is like, should we support a system where you give all the money and power to a handful of super rich white guys, and you have a bunch of diseducated white dudes and proxies going around the world blowing everything up? That's not really. It's just that's like an easy discussion. It's called "Don't support. That's horrible. Let's stop that by all means possible." That's not really a discussion, right? But there are discussions about how do we build our how do we build our multipolar, diverse planetary civilizations going forward? How do we balance our needs with the needs of nature? How do we resolve our differences historically? How do we interact as cultures, right? Those are real questions, right? That require interfacing between Asians, Africans, Latin Americans, and eventually Europeans and North American Westerners too. But they seem to not be able to do a lot of that. They seem to mostly just they don't even know how to do diplomacy, right? I mean, on a highest geopolitical level and also on an individual, interpersonal level, right? And but learning how to do that is something that Westerners are going to have to do. The new younger generations are learning that. That's why they have so many K-pop fans and people that listening to African music, watching, Al-Qassam videos, and connecting with people all around the world. Younger Western generations are learning slowly how to do that. But we still have a lot of, childish, planet stomping, octogenarian dinosaurs, making things harder. But anyway, long story short, so the discussion that's being had there is also between the two women. That's a realistic discussion. That was one of the things that this white guy was saying. The white Forbes writer was saying, hey, this is unrealistic. Like, that's the most realistic thing. I mean, do you even know how to parent? You probably don't, because you probably don't have kids and you're a spoiled brat, and or your wife left you, and or you just like have a kid and you don't ever see them because you're a spoiled white guy who thinks that women should have two jobs of child caring and a professional job, and you should just have the one job, and that's false and bad, and you should give that bullshit up. And yeah, so anyways, so children, I taught kids for a long time. We have kids. Children say all kind of weird things. Children like get into weird fights, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's what children do. That's not what adult Western dudes still do that. A lot of them, right? I mean, so a realistic white man Jedis should be like bickering ridiculously over nonsense, right? Because that's what they actually do, right? It's kind of like getting mad at the writers of this show. A realistically written privileged white guy Jedi like Luke Skywalker should just be like, oh no, you didn't make my lightsaber the right color, blah 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 blah. That's what a realistic Western white guy Jedi should be like, right? But so actually Acolyte, where the children act like children and the adults act like adults, that's actually very, the adults that are actually like people resisting the Empire, that's actually one of the most realistic things about Star Wars, in this season, because that's what it's like to actually have kids, and not discard them and be a deadbeat loser, like the people that watch Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan, who don't know anything about kids, and they even say, I never want to have kids, I never want to be around kids. That's because you're an infantile loser and your society has no future. Anyways, that's the end. Don't forget, everything we do here is supported by. I'm gonna edit that extreme Silver Spook rip your face off level of resistance. I choose violence in the last 5 seconds. No, if you would like to support what we do here, though, you can also help us out through Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/silverspook, and on Patreon. We have to, in my defense, I have to put up with that kind of crap like all day long. I mean, it's like hundreds of Twitter and YouTube and comments all over, not as much on YouTube, but all over social media and all over the place. Got to put up with nonsense all day long. Sometimes you just got to be like, you know what? I'm just like, again, being in perpetual rage is sometimes what happens when you are on trying to, just be an indigenous person, queer person of color, just trying to be on the right side of history. You're just going to deal with all kind of, right? If you try to do any work, you're going to deal with all kind of nasty people saying all kind of nasty stuff. So sometimes you just got to be like, you know what? Anyways. And then I go play Team Fortress and, shoot a bunch of ZIO and IST inside of that game. Anyways. You can also support us through patreon.com/Neofeud, and you can also get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on. Here's some of the latest in July. Happy July, patrons! It has finally heated up to the point where all of the flowers in Hawaii are blooming. So we have weather updates in Hawaii, and also the Silver Spook cooperative pluricrop garden, indigenous pluricrop garden. We're restoring the ecology and preventing climate change as best as we can, and producing food and medicine using the land that we are on, which is, and as a native Hawaiian, this is part of Land Back. Also making video games like Neofeud 2. Speaking of science fiction, this is a scene in Neofeud 2 where we have actual light speed travel. So I have my Star Wars moment here in Neofeud 2. We have hyperspace. Neofeud 2's got hyperspace. Okay, so so look out for that. It's coming for you. Is it hyperspace or is it warp? Full warp. I think in Star Trek it's full warp. I think in the Star Wars it's a hyperdrive. Anyways, so we got lots of updates on that, and we also have strawberry updates on another food that is grown here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, or grows around here, called the strawberry guava. Talking about restoring that. That's Holly showing and eating and sampling the strawberry guava that is made into jellies and jams, and so I talk about like lots of stuff we do physically at the Silver Spook Cooperative, as well as the games related stuff and other international panels, education and activism work. And if you want all of that, that's one thing you can get. Also, you can get access to the Silver Spook Discord and the Silver Spook University, over 1,000 hours of all the content I've created, categorized according to topic, which is available when you become a Silver Spook patron. You can also get access to, you can also support us through grabbing the games like Neofeud. Neofeud is on sale right now, so don't forget. Tell your friends, family, your family, your comrades, and everyone in between to grab the Neofeud, and grab it for your friends and grab it for your people who play video games. And you can be sure to if you like the game, it is a dystopian cyberpunk adventure game where a social worker for homeless robots, a delinquent ex-con robot drug dealer turned revolutionary, and a ex-trillionaire princess who is pro-socialism, tries to overthrow a global plutocracy, living in floating palaces with fleets of autonomous drones and as many Terminators and agents from the Matrix in their military as they can produce. So anyway, if that sounds interesting, right? There's lots of sci-fi and tech and action movie references from all of the years in the last 40. I mean, I love my 80s and 90s nostalgia as much as anybody else. You know what I'm saying? Of my age. So it's all in there. But it also has a lot to say about the current day's politics. And from my perspective as a Hawaiian social worker, former STEM teacher, social worker, and also ongoing activist here in U.S. occupied, imperial occupied Hawaii. You can also, if you like the game, leave even a very short review on the Silver Spook on the Neofeud page, and it really helps to get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm when you do that. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux, and also there's several other games on the itch site like Decolonators and Pigeon with Gun. And the maximum revenue comes to us when you pick the game up on the itch.io website as well, so consider doing that. You can also get Woman, which is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christian culture, and it critiques that culture from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. And it's free, or you can donate some money when you pick that up. You can also follow at Silver Spook Games at Octanon.social, at Silver Spook Games at Mastodon.social, and you can also follow on Twitter at Silver Spook Guy, on Twitter at Silver Spook Guy, and you can also follow Silver Spook Games minus the Ian Silver for the games related stuff. You can also follow Terminus C. Terminus C is the account for Terminus Cyberstar, which is a cyberpunk RPG that I'm the content director and the lead writer of. And of course, you can follow Holly. Holly at the Tech Fairy is of course a partner and moderator here for this stream, and of course for the Katenix show. I'm back in Free Hawaii, listening to lots of music. I just got a bunch of music recommendations from Holly. Speaking of multipolarity, I got Thai, Korean, Indian, Tom Morello, African Americans like Tom Morello and Megan Thee Stallion performing with Baby Metal, a Japanese group. So that's part of multipolarity, is multipolar music as well. So anyways, so Holly of course is followable there. Do it. And also thank you to all the people on the list here for your ongoing support. Without your support, it's difficult for us to keep doing this work. So thank you so much to all of our Patreon patrons for all the help, and thanks everybody for watching. And until next time, keep your racist policies be excellent to each other. May the force be with you. May the force be with you and equally with you as everyone else in the world and in the galaxy, and not just with a few people and a unjust oligarchy that is sending the hoarded force users and the force resources to crush everyone else.